Hey, Mom.
Good morning, Megan. Here we are again.
I
Yay.
know. Chapter 17 of the Tao Te Ching. We've been going chapter by chapter, talking about spiritual stuff and some of our favorite holy books, and this is one of them.
Yes.
Yeah. Welcome to
Yes.
Sacred Soul Mornings. This is what we do.
Yep. And so I was earlier, I was saying, let me read a quote that my one of my yoga instructors loves to begin our class with a quote, and then she ends with the same quote before. And so she likes to quote Marcus Aurelius. And I really had to look up who that
Yeah.
was. I've
I
heard the
don't know
name,
who it is either, not his history.
but apparently he was an emperor of Rome at around the 180 era, and and he was a philosopher. So apparently he wrote quotes down, and one of them that he wrote down, and this is kind of significant with what we were, some personal life stuff going on. Uh, this one is, "You have power over your mind,
Oh,
not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Right now, I'm laughing because it isn't as powerful to me right
I
now as it was
know. But that is the
a
key to
half an hour ago.
everything. That is the key to everything.
It is the
Yes.
key.
Timely quote. Timely quote.
But sometimes it is. And let me do one more. And I don't know who wrote this, but anyway, the light is always out there. And I'm thinking of God in a way, or the universe, the energy, whatever it is. The light is always out there. And the smallest part of that light is brighter than the deepest darkness. Don't despair. It'll be okay.
I like that.
I do too. I just,
Yeah, it never goes away. The light is a
it
great
never goes away.
analogy. It never goes away. Sometimes we just can't see it because of some shadows or something's
Some of those events.
in the middle of the light in us. Yeah.
And we're just human. We're just human, um and we can feel negative thoughts sometimes. We can feel negative feelings sometimes.
Of
And
course.
then remember to remember the light. And Jesus was the light and the way.
In that,
And yeah.
yeah. In
Mhm.
those books, Jesus
Yeah.
was one of the examples of the light and the way, but yeah, not the
Yeah.
only,
Oh
not the
no. Yeah. And I just the way, the truth, and the life. I think that anyway, that's what popped in my mind.
Yeah, no, that's why light is so important. And we say that. And so in this chapter, in chapter 17, it's very timely, as I'm sure it was for Lao Tzu, because at least mine, it's talking about the types of leaders. And, I'm sure he felt compelled to write this because he might have not had the best types of leadership happening. I mean, if it was going great, he would have just stayed right where he was, but it
Exactly.
wasn't. So he
Mhm.
hightailed it out on his donkey, went up to go sit somewhere by himself, and he contemplated and wrote down this from source, from Tao.
Mhm.
Yeah, about the types and levels of leaders. And so right now in our political climate, boy, we can consider what types of leaders we have and what kind we hold up.
We don't have to label them,
We could. We could spell out their
but
names.
anybody that might be listening to this can label their
Good,
own.
maybe needs to. No, it's but the point is this was 600 years before Jesus Christ. This has been going on for forever. And it's not just leadership on the political level like your country, it's also leadership even in your own home. So
Mm-hmm.
think of mothers with children, that's a good
Yes,
example, and fathers with
it
children,
is.
and teachers.
And teachers and anybody that has any leadership role of any kind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So mine was titled We Did It Ourselves, and yours was titled something that seems completely opposite.
And it says it happened naturally. And we'll get into it in a few minutes about my translation that I'm reading talks about it, talk has a different angle,
Yeah.
completely different angle. But then there is some unifying things that we'll get to in a minute. Did you want to
Yeah.
begin with yours?
Here's
Okay.
mine. John Minford. Yeah. So it starts out by saying we did it ourselves, and it goes through the types of leaders from the best type of leader down to the worst type of leader. So it says the highest rulers were beyond knowledge. Boy, that's powerful on its own because knowledge, you know,
Mhm.
the very beginning in the garden. What happened? Oh, we
Oh,
ate some knowledge. We
what
got
started
some
sinking
knowledge.
in
Yeah, we
in
started
our
labeling. We started making little boxes around stuff. Anyway, so the highest rulers are beyond knowledge. Those under them, beneath them, were loved and praised. Okay. Those under them were feared. Those under them were reviled. So, I mean, we might want to think about like maybe some leaders in the past you might want to think about.
Mhm.
Control levels. Wherever trust is lacking on high, it is lacking below. So trust is important. The Taoist is distant, sparing with words. So a Taoist leader would be sparing with words and distant, okay? Whatever is accomplished, whatever occurs, the common the common folk declare, we did it of our own accord, we did it ourselves. So what does
Mhm.
that mean? It means
Well, it's
that they, yeah, go ahead.
kind of having
They did it
trust
themselves. They
and having
feel.
trust in your crew. In other words, I know I thought of my previous job, teacher, and there were times when I had leadership that when I look at it, and I won't anyway, it wasn't loved and the person wasn't loved and praised. The person was always out in the open, out speaking a lot. So wasn't,
Are you
and mine,
talking about principals?
yeah.
Okay. No, I've worked in
And
many schools. I can play this game. Yeah. Mhm.
and did use kind of fear controlling things, and it was so hard. Um, yeah, I don't know why I even brought that up, but anyway, my said called the highest level the shadowy presence. I like that those
But a
words.
good shadow.
A good shadow, invisible leadership, and but then my the lowest one, uh, my one of the translations I read said one with whom they take liberties. They're desiring to be liked, um, but they take liberties trying to get people to look at them, and I don't know. I guess that could be the reviled.
Well, mine says those believe that are the ones that have love, were loved and praised. Okay. So that, I mean, they were seeking that desire to be seen. They were
Uh-huh.
a public persona.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's not a bad thing. Like we like
Yeah.
those people. They're not the best, but they're okay.
Hmm.
Like I even think of like even like our like okay, Gandhi.
Yeah.
Okay, Martin Luther King Jr., anybody that goes into like a preaching profession, anybody that goes into like a public, like even
Hmm.
Oprah.
Or
It's
even
not a,
teachers.
yeah, even teachers, it's
Go
not
back.
a bad thing. It's
Hmm.
just that's where you are. There is a public persona with it, and that you're wanting to teach people by example and by your words. But
Hmm.
but this is saying there's a level above that where you don't even you don't tell them this is the way.
Hmm.
You encourage them to figure it out on their own through trust.
Yes.
Intrinsic motivation. How do we cultivate intrinsic motivation? And I know you know about that from teaching because we all went,
Well, and that's what the reason why I thought of this principle. She had, anyway, this person had no trust in the
yeah.
group,
And
had
I,
no trust.
right before I left my job in the public school system, I wrote a very long email with PDF attachments, which I'm sure nobody wanted to look at, of how there is research based on
Mm,
trusting your group.
I remember that.
And there
Hmm.
is research based on that, that when you believe that your group is capable, whether they're students or educators or fellow professionals, then they are going to rise to that belief. When you believe and micromanage that they are incapable,
Hmm.
they will rise to that, lower to that. You
Hmm.
get the bar high. And I mean, when I was working even with little bitty kids, we all know what happened when we started, okay, PBIS. When we all started doing like behavior um
Intervention
micromanaging,
plans.
yeah,
Hmm.
where we're like, okay, which is a great idea, kind of. We're like, all right, now you gotta do this, and then good job. Like snow pants to a minute level, snow pants,
Yeah.
gloves, everything. But then they stopped even figuring out how to put their own clothes on because they just stand there and be like, what comes next? I don't know,
Mhm.
and they'd
Yeah.
stand there with no intrinsic motivation
Hmm.
waiting to do basic things that children never had a problem with in the history of the world by the time they were in kindergarten.
Hmm.
It was weird. And then
Yeah.
we cultivated that on accident.
Yeah.
Even things like I've watched this in my own house. I can't open my fork from Taco Bell, a spork in a plastic. Can't open it. And I'm not talking about a baby. How did that happen? It's because of not believing in the environment around that child that they are capable. So I was talking to you all. I mean, I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but the freedom I had as a child to take care of myself cultivated the ability to do so. It's true. It was good. It cultivated the ability for me to do that.
Well,
You
you
were in
know,
college. You were in college. I'm
I
not
know I was
claiming
busy,
that.
busy, busy and felt guilty, but
But it
you,
cultivated the ability for me to do things. And I'm not someone who sits there and says, please, someone help me. I can't open my spork
mm,
or milk carton. I will get that open.
yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Thank you for seeing the good side of
That's a
it.
huge good side because I have to
Mhm.
manufacture that with my kids who live in a subdivision with a
Yeah.
comfortable life. I have to manufacture this and it's uncomfortable. I have to
Hmm.
say, okay, um, I need you to do whatever by yourselves. And it's
Hmm.
uncomfortable for me when I know everybody else is not letting their kids go do that by themselves,
Hmm.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm leaving you home alone. You have no food. Figure it out. No,
Mm.
it's true.
They're not little bitty babies.
No, but their friends are not experiencing that,
Hmm.
and I have
Hmm.
to cultivate it. Anyway, it's the same. It's the same with adults and with countries.
Hmm. Yeah. To have that perspective.
Hmm.
Um, so, hmm, I was thinking of why don't I read my translation and see if we can find some connections
Sure, sounds good.
for my book, the source that I use. And actually, when I read this the first time, well, not the first time I've read it before, but when I read it the other day, trying to get my mind focused on it, it actually gave me some peace. And this doesn't talk about leadership, my translation doesn't, but it gave me some peace in that moment because I was had some weather issues in my house. And so it's kind
Your
of good
house got flooded in the bedroom.
weather issue. Okay.
Yeah.
It did.
Mhm. Well, people need to know that
Well,
things happen,
I'm having to deal with that.
and
But
the
anyway,
floor is ruined, so you have to figure that out. Yeah.
so I'm having to figure that out. Thank
Right.
you. It's true. It's real life stuff going on and other stuff. But anyway, okay. So a couple of days later, I was going, well, I need to read chapter 17 and, try to get my mind wrapped around that. But in the process, it gave me some peace. So it says the deepest virtue is to be unaware of a separate self at all. Being aware of a separate self, it is good to have compassion for that self. That's the part that got me.
Mm.
Being aware of a separate self, it is good to have compassion for that self. Not having compassion for ourselves, we become afraid of our own nature. And I kind of know what that feels like to be afraid of, those feelings of I'm not good enough. I don't do enough of this and I don't do enough of that to be a good person or whatever. Um, become afraid, not having compassion for ourselves, we become afraid of our own nature. Being afraid of our own nature, we come to actually hate ourselves. Hating ourselves, how can we value anyone else? So that makes me think of the
Mm.
next level,
Yeah.
you know, and maybe that's the connection that I was making with your translation is maybe some people who are reviled that level or feared because they are controlled, maybe inside of themselves, they really don't like themselves, even if they're not conscious of it. But in their subconscious, they
Yes.
really don't like themselves. And so they don't value anybody else.
Yeah. And I would say, I know it's easy to say they don't like themselves. We always say that. Maybe they don't
Mhm.
like themselves. Teachers say that.
Yeah.
There are, a subgroup of people who really just don't even have any feelings.
It
So
makes,
I can't
yeah.
even say like or not like, but I will say that that group, universally from working with tons and tons and tons of young adults who are not diagnosed probably, but might They get diagnosed in those cluster Bs later.
Mhm.
It's not
Mhm.
necessarily they like it or don't like it, but they are unsure of themselves. They know that they do not know who they are. And so
Mhm.
they layer identities on top. And when you layer identities on top that you are unsure of, that aren't part of source, that are not
Mhm.
grounded, it's like a straw man. It can change with the wind. And
Mhm.
yeah, and that is what makes people do rash actions
Mhm.
on small scales, like in homes, like when you have a super controlling parental figure
Mhm.
who's like, I am the leader of this house. I watched a wife swap episode like this, did not turn out well for that family later.
Mhm.
It led to a murder, actually. But they were a very controlling fundamentalist Christian family. That wife swap episode was years before the murder. But that unit of parents, they had an idea of what they thought authority was. This is authority. This is control. This is being a man
Mhm.
over my house. But it wasn't based on anything in source. It was just based on that identity. And it doesn't give you any gray area to be fluid. It didn't inspire their children to rise up to be their own individuals.
Mhm. So to tell it, one of the kids
Yeah,
killed
one of
him.
the kills killed one of the children when he grew up, killed a sibling and the mother later, which
Mhm.
is horrible. But growing up in a similar culture, truly,
Mhm.
they seem like very similar. um, I get it. Not that we want to kill people, but that level of I am so trapped. I am
Uh,
so trapped and
mhm.
having no internal compass about hope. Whew.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's on a small level with a
Yeah.
family unit. But what happens on a national level where you have a leader who is wish-washy and saying, I'm gonna get rid of all these people. And now
Mhm.
we're just gonna throw all these bombs at these people and not even act like it kills people. We're just gonna say it's a great military success. What does that
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
What's a military success? How many lives were lost? I don't know. That's not in the news.
Mhm.
What happens? Well, it's not the type of society that aspires people to take care of themselves.
Mhm.
And so we end up with prison systems.
Mhm.
So we end up with, people doing other things instead of building up their own. And so the type of ruler that is pretty much in the shadows, like you said, your first verse, what was it they called it? The
The shadowy presence.
shadowy presence. They're there, but they're saying, you know what? Everything is not going to fall apart if I step back. Everything
Mhm.
is not going to fall apart. And that is exactly what I noticed. I said this on this podcast before when I worked with the 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds. In general, most 4 and 3-year-olds, when you stick them out there, even though they've never been together before, they've never been even to a setting before with all of them, and you step back, they actually kind of are okay. You'll have
Mhm.
some that'll say, "Oh," to the ones who have some special needs, they'll say, "Oh, you come down off of there, you're going to get hurt." And then, some mothering types will do that. And then other ones will say, "Oh, do you want to play with us?" And then other ones who were doing really out of control things because they came from families that taught them to do out of control behaviors. Other ones will start saying, "You need to go away until you
Mhm.
can be safe." I mean, they kind of do better than we do as adults.
Mhm. Because maybe at that level, and I know that's probably what you're saying, is until we put all those shields on and all those layers on, the good that of the universe, the good of that energy, whatever it is, our spirits, whatever it is, wants good.
Yeah.
And
Now,
overall,
now, I'm not saying let them run loose with cars, but in an enclosed area, like we had a rooftop playground. On the rooftop playground, in general, things happen, but um, they were just much more in control than you would think. Once they
hmm
realized that you were not watching, which
hmm
very rarely would happen. But if they know you're watching, that's when all mayhem happens, where people
that's
are
true.
vying for attention and doing craziness and being like, I'm going to jump off the roof and see if you notice. But if the adult's not there, it's not so fun to jump off the roof and see if anybody notices. Anyway,
Oh,
oh, yeah. And I watched
well,
can I tell you a
go
little
ahead.
story about my
Yeah,
3-year-old empowering? Um,
yeah.
my older ones, I had their monitor on them on the inside of the house and their pack and plays and stuff. Well, I'll be doing metal art outside. Okay. But that was weird. But they did okay. But the 3-year-old, we decided to clean the garage, yesterday. And I put
Yeah.
the monitor on her and I told her, of course, she's in a safe environment. I said, we're going outside and working. We're going outside and working. And I could see her though. But like when she knew we were not there, she was fine.
Isn't that
She's,
funny?
I could hear her. She didn't really know that I could really see her that well, but she was just going, telling our dog, that he needed to stop barking and telling him, I'm going to go get a carrot and I'll be right back.
Oh.
Like,
Mhm.
just super independent. But as soon as she thought somebody could come in the door, like her dad or something, she'd be like, "Hi,
Mhm.
I so tired." But I said, "Whatever." Huh?
Oh, yeah.
Just want
Something
to say,
about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Mm.
What were you gonna say?
I was going to read the last little part about self-hate, from self-hate, free from self-hate. Our actions are not burdened by our need for attention. It's interesting. Therefore, people say it happened naturally. But
Yeah.
anyway, free from self-hate, our actions are not burdened by our need for attention.
You don't need attention if you don't hate yourself. You don't need attention. People need attention because they don't know who they are. So they have to go, I hate to say I am man, but I keep seeing people with these big trucks, right? And they got their labels all over the truck about their feelings and guns and all kinds of stuff. It says, I am man, I love guns. I am
Yeah.
man, I love hunting with guns. That's not a person. That's your identity. Okay. It could be the
Mm.
other way too. It could say, I am a woman. I don't know what. I'm trying to
Let's think. How would we
there's
do that?
other things too,
Yeah.
but identities um are strong. That's why we like to wear t-shirts that have sayings on them.
Yeah.
Even my life is good ones. Life is good.
Yeah.
I am a calm person. I'm happy. I label myself. Mhm.
And I do. I have a t-shirt that says fearless.
Yeah.
So
Fearless.
I wear it when I'm really kind of afraid. Put my shirt on, fearless.
Yeah, I'm like my Dolly Parton shirt's one of those. Anyway, those are identities that we peel off. And so that last part, and it says we did it for our own accord, we did it ourselves. Can you imagine living in a society where we were given the opportunity to rise up and do that, man? That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I
Well, then
watched,
I'm thinking
oh,
of
no,
the five dharmas
yeah,
and that a person wrote about, and that it all works together for the good of everybody if
yeah.
given the opportunity to do so.
Yes, and the dharmic idea is that there's different archetypes of people. And it could be taken to the extreme where this is your fate, and you can make a whole society on that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about there's just different archetypes and it works in a balance.
Mm-hmm.
And we
And
need everybody.
complement each other, the
Yeah,
different, and complement each other. Like the analogy of, well, we've talked about that way a long time ago, about the whole is made up of its many parts and
absolutely.
um,
And
and works
some are
together.
seemly and unseemly, but we need all of them.
There we go. Okay, we
Comely
haven't
and
said that in a
uncommon.
while.
I was watching a show on Netflix, I think, about prisons. I've watched a couple shows about prisons. I'm always am interested in the prison system in different countries. But there was one program here in a United States prison where they gave some of the men who had um they were all on what do you call it? They were all there for life. They were all there for life. But some of them who had no violent issues within the prison system were given a little freedom to go to this little
Mhm.
program where people donated fabric. And
Oh, I love
they were
that.
able to make quilts to
Mm-hmm.
provide to children in foster care.
Mm-hmm.
And they were given freedom
Mm-hmm.
to do that. And they just were different personalities entirely in
Mm-hmm.
that safe area of competence. They gave them
Yes.
competence.
Yeah.
And even some of the men were like, when I come in here, I am a different personality. Because when I'm
Mm-hmm.
out there, I have to pretend to be this way. So they have to put the
Mm-hmm.
identity on. And then
Yeah.
they'll strip it off. And then there are these
Mm-hmm.
compassionate men who were talking about colors and patterns, and they love
Mm-hmm.
butterflies and helping these children in art. And I just thought, wow. So the proof is there. We have enough proof in our society that if you let people rise to their abilities and believe in them, it can happen.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to have a leader who's able to step back
Mm-hmm.
and do it.
And it doesn't mean step back and not do anything. It just means let the people use their internal gifts.
Well, I don't even know, Mom, about that because we think all the way back in the Bible, what happened when people were like, we really want a king?
Isn't that true?
We really want a king. And those prophets were like, this is really not a good idea. But if you
Mm-hmm.
really got to have one, fine. And how'd that go?
Yeah, it's true.
Not
So
so
the
awesome.
evidence is there too about that. So I don't know.
Yeah. So interesting. Yeah, and the Bible talks about like the idea in the fundamentalist groups, they have the phrase servant leadership, which there's great things about the Bible, and I hesitate to say those things sometimes, like servant leadership, because that phrase can be negative when it's related to some of that dogmatic stuff.
Ugly stuff.
It's
Yeah.
such a good phrase and it's such a good message. But like, we were talking about Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A has a servant leadership model, and some things are not great with them. But I like the idea that their franchise owners have to work
Mm-hmm.
alongside.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you know, I loved
Mm-hmm.
it. So servant leadership makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
All right, we got about 5 minutes left.
okay.
Next week is chapter 18. We're gonna go through this whole book, and then after that we'll do some other book or something. But
Mm-hmm. I
chapter
have to
18
look
is
up
the decay of the Tao. The decay of the
the
Tao. What
oh,
does
that's
that mean?
interesting.
It's short. What's yours say? Something different. The life of the Tao. I don't know. What does it say?
No, but the pretense of life.
Wow.
Well, kind of the decay of the Tao and then the pretense of life. It'll probably mesh the
Okay.
two ideas. Chapter 17, they were kind of not opposite, but
Different focus to the same thing. But that's how
mhm.
how these translations work with commentaries. I think that's neat. It shows how broad translations can be. You can't
Oh,
take things literally,
there you go. There you go.
whatever that means.
We know
Whatever holy books.
we know what that means. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Okay. Well, this has been good, Mom. Thanks. I like
thanks.
this weekly, I don't know what,
Oh,
talking
enjoy.
meditation. Talking
Yes.
meditation. Yeah. So this has been Sacred Soul Mornings. Life's not I don't know, checklist. It's a journey. Life's a journey, not a checklist. So enjoy the
You
ride.
got a checklist, by the way. You showed it to me.
A big one.
Sorry. Say it again. The right way.
Life's a journey, not a checklist.
Okay.
So I should burn it. Have a good week. We'll
You
do this
too.
again.
Bye.
Okay, bye.